Salutations everyone, I'm Niru. So, I have taught a lot of things in this channel. If you ever watched my Danganronpa streams, you would know that I am a fan of mystery films. Mainly like murder mysteries or basically just detective stories in general. One of my biggest favorites, of course, obviously, is Sherlock Holmes. I grew up with Sherlock Holmes when I was about in middle school. When I was a bit of like still that little kid, still coming off of being a teenager almost soon. And I started to fall in love with Sherlock Holmes once I watched the first movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, who starred as the two main characters of the series, Holmes and Watson. And I remembered buying it at a Walmart one day. It was $5 and it was pretty cheap. It wasn't like, it was going to be almost a year until the sequel came out, and this movie was already like how many years old since it came out in 2009. So I bought it alongside of a copy of Percy Jackson that I started to regret purchasing the moment I watched it. So I honestly did enjoy that film. I thought it was pretty cool. Even Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Sherlock Holmes, I quite enjoyed pretty much. That's a lot, honestly. I got addicted to more Sherlock Holmes stuff the moment I watched that movie and its sequel. Then I went on to watch the Sherlock TV series that put Sherlock Holmes in modern day. And I did enjoy it at a time when I was still that teenager back then. But the more I'm looking back at that show, it hasn't quite aged perfectly. I think the major flaw is Stephen Moffat as the writer of that show, because I feel like he was more pressured into making that show than let alone wait for someone to actually make a modern day Sherlock Holmes retelling. We already did, and it was Elementary, but that show is garbage. The show did try, at least, and I know that there was still heart and soul put into the series because clearly these creators did love Sherlock Holmes. But I think it suffers from, well, let's say the Moffat-isms. Stephen Moffat has been kind of notorious for Doctor Who fans that didn't like the complex and complicated storylines he kept making in his written episodes for Doctor Who when he started taking over as the series' his main writer, mainly for when he did the 11th Doctor. And he has made a lot of complicated stuff in his time as the writer of Doctor Who. Now, I never had a problem with them in the beginning when I first started watching Doctor Who, but it kind of took in a bit of a turn once he wrote for the last season for the 12th Doctor, and that writing wasn't that great. I'll always love Series 9. I think that's the best season for Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. Sure. But I'm getting sidetracked on that. The thing is, Moffat always tries to overcomplicate stuff in his work, which doesn't need to be overly complicated in the first place. Yes. And, as much as I did enjoy the show, as much as I liked that it was doing a modern day spin on Sherlock Holmes, and I did like the actors who played the characters, Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman, respectively, looking back at the show, it hasn't held up to memory. So, I still have like all the seasons on DVD, all perched up in my DVD movie corner right there. But I haven't lost my love for Sherlock Holmes because of that show, no. I just Sherlock Holmes hasn't had the best track record as of lately. 2018 was the worst year to have Sherlock Holmes, mainly for Will Ferrell's terrible comedy Holmes and Watson, and that movie was atrocious, like absolutely horrible. I even made a review about it on my Facebook page, and I didn't love that movie one bit. I thought I could enjoy it, maybe as a silly, stupid, haha film and laugh about how bad it was, but no, it couldn't even be that either. It was so fucking bad. It scared me to think that this was gonna be the last Sherlock Holmes movie to come to theaters for everyone. And that's the last note that Holmes has to go out on, was a terrible movie. And I hope to God that the next Sherlock Holmes movie is gonna come out, which I heard it is gonna be released sometime this year during Christmas, so there might be hope yet for a new Sherlock Holmes. But what completely flew over my radar was that there was a new Sherlock Holmes movie that came out in 2019. It just didn't have an English dub release yet. And it was an animated film called Sherlock Holmes and the Great Escape, starring an anthropomorphic dog, Sherlock Holmes, and an anthropomorphic cat, John Watson. Huh? So yeah, it's weird that I wasn't kidding about this movie is basically a furry Sherlock Holmes story. And this ain't the first time Sherlock Holmes has been an animal before. I mean, he was a rat in The Great Mouse Detective. No, Moriarty was a rat. Sherlock was a mouse, never mind. And directed by Hayao Miyazaki's animated TV series Sherlock Hound. Edge, of course, he played a dog. Which I thought this was supposed to be based off of that series because he was a dog in this. But no, this is actually based off of a series of children's comic books from Hong Kong actually, called The Great Detective Sherlock Holmes. I never heard of these comic books, nor have I even bothered to read them either. I just researched this whole entire movie to find out what origins was it from. And apparently this Hong Kong made film was made by a Hong Kong writer who actually made these books. And honestly, I do like the style of this anime film. It does the same technique as, well, I guess one of the examples is being Claws and a few other things like the Tom and Jerry movie. They use the same kind of way of animation where they make it look like it's 2D animated when in reality it's just a 3D model that looks like it's been drawn with pen and paper. I mean, it is clearly obvious it is CGI, but I honestly am impressed and love this style of 3D animation to make something look like it's 2D animated, like it was just a 2D film, but it isn't. It's just 3D. I'm actually amazed with this animation, especially it's from Hong Kong, so that's pretty good work. It's just actually beautiful to look at. I love a lot of things about this movie that makes it well animated. There's one scene in this film, well, actually multiple scenes, when every time Sherlock does some deduction, once he solves a case or knows how the culprit does a certain thing of how to escape or how they killed someone, there would be an animation that shows how the killings happen in the most creative way possible. Like, he shows the two people that in question in a room. One was the person that was hurting someone, and the other one was the one that killed him. And he views them as people that were like chess pieces on a chessboard, basically, having them on top of little platforms and making them look like just basically figurines. Sorry, I'm stuttering a lot. I am very tired today. I almost kind of laughed a bit seeing little chibi figurines of characters stabbing each other in the back and then proceed to kill them at the moment's rest. And then once like one of the murderer, once he froze like some kind of like model ship on top of the culprit's head, no, the victim, not the culprit, sorry, the victim's head, you would see like the chip of the wood piece of like a toy or something crack open, like his head cracked open because he died, which I found pretty hilarious. There's also another thing I liked, which is also the use of like showing like liquids or any type of objects and giving them like face personalities, like air or like water or some kind of heat. And I found it hilarious that they gave these little like molecules of like heat or air or fucking like water, like little like faces to show the purpose of what they are doing. Like they had to explain it to a kid, like the water will turn to frozen ice and hold together, or turn into a liquid and they're all droopy and such, which I found silly, but I honestly thought it was a bit of a creative way that no kid is probably listening to Sherlock Holmes is like his explanation of how like a prisoner escaped or how someone murdered someone. They just did it in a creative way that a kid will pay attention to it visually instead of like all just word babble. Another thing I honestly love too is like how Sherlock Holmes has to decide how to like chase someone. He's riding on a bike, he's chasing a guy who kidnapped a newly engaged bride, which I'm not gonna spoil right yet, but I will say this. This criminal kidnaps a woman who got recently married in a vehicle, and Sherlock has to find the quickest way to corner him. So when he's riding a bike, he's trying to find the shortcut in the street, and you see like him passing by different street signs, and he's like calculating what is the shortest route to get to him quicker. And he he sees the street, and then you see like a map in his head, like basically like a GPS or a navigation system, and he's like seeing where he would go and how much time it would take him. Going by the speed he's going will take him to get to the other side of the street. So he cuts through like a alleyway, rides his bike there, and then grabs a trash can and throws the trash lid and throws it at the bad guy's head to try and get the drop on him, but it doesn't work, sadly. And then he loses him once he falls off his bike after getting hit by the car that the villain is being chased in. And so Holmes tries to find a way to get to him because there's like a split in the path. And Sherlock, since he probably knows London in the back of his hand, he tries to find the quickest way or the best way to capture him and get to him quick. And he tries to calculate the ways of how to get to him. There's one part where he's trying to catch him, thinking he can make it before the train cuts him off, but then it shows that nope, that's bad. You might get killed in the process if you take that route. So he tries to think of a shortcut. So he goes the other way and cuts to some person's house and rides the bike up the stairs to get to the roof to jump over the other train so he doesn't get hit, but then realizes, oh wait, another train is going to come by and hit him. So either way, he's screwed if he tries to chase after them, because he won't make it because he'll get killed in the process. Which is kind of weird. I'm trying to think, how would Holmes know that another train will come by? But then I just realized that maybe he knows like the times these trains come by, or he can hear like each train with his like hearing or something to find out which one is close by and which one's far away. Maybe he knew it by that or something. I just found it odd that he knew that there was going to be 2 trains passing by, but I don't know. I don't question it because maybe Holmes knows, because again, he's smart, but at least he's smarter than Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock Holmes, mainly. Because he doesn't try to talk fast like he knows everything, I guess. But I did love that take of it, showing Holmes how smart he is and how he would use his powers of deduction to try to find a way to get through things easier or try to solve the case in his way. And he does a great job with it, but sometimes he has his like mess ups in the like with the prison break scene, where he thinks that that the thief in question is escaping the prison, and he thinks that he made like an ice staircase to climb up the wall to escape, but then he gets like explained that the ice staircase never worked, and he had to use like his own piss to warm up a sheet of cloth from a blanket in the prison to use as a rope, and also have it instantly freeze on the wall so he can climb up the wall all safely. And the cloth ripped, and then he fell on the snow on the other side of the wall, which cushioned his blow to escape. And then he finds out that the cloth that fell over the wall was the one that he used to escape out of the prison. So that was pretty nice to see that Holmes was kind of a bit wrong in the process and was explained by the culprit how he actually did it. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting to see in this adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, but for kids. But for a kids movie, there's a lot of murder in it. Well, there's only one murder, but it's very violent for a kids movie, but I'm not complaining. What is Sherlock Holmes and the Great Escape? Well, it's kind of a loop of weird things, because it's less mystery and more like Sherlock Holmes questioning his life and questioning his actions, basically, in this movie. It's more about that and about a gentleman thief. So in short, Sherlock Holmes is fighting a gentleman thief in this movie. The White Storm thief has been stealing a bunch of items from rich people, mainly people that have been doing evil deeds, as said in the beginning of the film. Apparently a guy who's been loan sharking money to people has been quite horrible to the community and hurts a lot of people's lives and taking their money away. And this gentleman thief has been stealing money from this guy to go and try and help the people out, and selling him to the poor of the slums, and also giving the share of a charitable donation from all the riches and gold he has been stealing from these people to the orphanage where his daughter lives in. So Sherlock is on the case basically to find out who this gentleman thief is, and he finds out that he is the father of the girl in question who is in the orphanage, named Katie. Sherlock and a bunch of detectives and Watson go and try to capture the gentleman thief, since they assume that he will be attending his daughter's birthday. And of course, in Sherlock fashion, Sherlock tricks the cops into thinking that the thief will be cornered and going to the front door to escape the orphanage once he found out that he was being followed. But Holmes was smarter than that and knew that he would take a shortcut and he wanted to go and arrest the thief, not in front of his daughter, because he didn't want to be that cruel. But then, once he starts to get into a fight with the thief, he eventually gets captured, and the daughter sees with her own eyes that his father was a thief the whole time. Making this story kind of weird for me, because I thought that this was going to be a movie about Holmes trying to face off against a gentleman thief, but instead he captures him already in front of his own daughter, and then he's labeled as heartless amongst everyone in London. So this movie is basically about Holmes regretting that he has captured a generous man that only stole from people who were basically bad people for the sake of good, to help homeless people in the slums and helping his daughter and the orphanage that he helped fund and benefacted to keep it up and running so his daughter could grow up to be in a normal life. Everyone despises him, hates him, and just basically just not care who he is because he did something cruel to a person that just wanted to help his daughter and the good for all of the homeless people in London. Yet sadly, Holmes doesn't think that he did right. He just goes and locks himself up in his room and just becomes sad for a long time. So I want to bring up something else before we continue on with the story. There is a new character I never heard of from Sherlock Holmes books, and there's a character named Alice.
Well, you're always late with rent, and now dodgy people are here smashing the flat to bits. What have you got to say?
Who is this young girl that actually is in control of the house that Holmes is living in. And, you know, because he had like an apartment that he rented under the landlord, Mrs. Hudson. But there's no Mrs. Hudson in this story. Apparently, Alice is the niece of Mrs. Hudson, basically. You don't see Mrs. Hudson, but you see her niece, Alice, in this story. Which I almost thought that was Mrs. Hudson, but as a young teenage girl, which I found odd, but realized, nope, that's just her niece. And it's just strange to have like her, because she technically acts like more like another sidekick for Sherlock, and Watson's just there. No, really, Watson is just there, like what the heck? I mean, Alice is not a bad character, it's just very interesting that they chose like a younger person to run the place as the landlord as a way, just to see if Holmes would pay the rent, but instead pay for a cell phone. Sorry, I mean mobile telephone, because the future is now, old man.
If you don't embrace the new era will leave you behind. The future is worth investing in.
At what cost? My aunt will want to know why you're late with the rent.
Speaking of Watson, since we're talking about different new characters that I never heard of, Watson I don't like in this movie. Now, the Watson I know a lot from Sherlock Holmes stories is basically a doctor who was also a soldier who fought in the war. That's the Watson I knew.
Relax. I'm a doctor.
And Jude Law portrayed him perfectly in the Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey Jr., and I thought that was really good. This Watson here is a coward.
Told you to do more exercises, but you sleep on your days off.
Now that's like putting it harshly, you may think, but no, this Watson's a coward who eats a lot, and he just, well, doesn't even have the courage to fight at all and just stays in the sidelines to help Sherlock. And it's really embarrassing. Like, this is the guy I'm supposed to believe is John Watson, the guy who wrote the books about Sherlock Holmes' exploits, and, like, teamed up beside him. He acts more like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and he's just fearful about everything, thinking he doesn't know what to do. He's such a coward, he doesn't take any initiative to fight at all. But when he does try to fight, he's a weakling. He just goes and uses his little cane every time he sees a bad guy and tries to hit them in the head with it, but it doesn't work to no avail. It only works at the end of the movie when they defeated the main bad guy who kidnapped the thief's daughter, and he just hits them with the cane, and he's knocked out cold. Like, really? This is the John Watson we are gonna follow for this entire movie? I mean, he barely has any lines, but sometimes Watson has his funny moments as well.
Go for it. Children, please give a round of applause and welcome our storyteller today, the great detective, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Must I? Really?
No. Yet, I feel like he's very inconsistent with his character. At first, when he is very strict on Sherlock for paying for a mobile telephone, even though that's technically 3 years of rent that they have to squander off without paying to Mrs. Hudson, or at least this case Alice, because seriously, where the heck is Mrs. Hudson? Is Alice really just the new landlord and Mrs. Hudson said, I'm done with Sherlock Holmes' bullshit, so I'm just gonna go and like have a vacation? Actually, you know what? Maybe that is what happened to her, don't you think? I mean, it's better than having her as the daughter of James Moriarty in the fucking stupid Holmes and Watson movie. Seriously, what sense did that make? But anyway, so Watson just seemed to be still like the Watson I knew. He's just bickering about what Sherlock is doing is stupid, and also complaining about stuff, and then trying to be, well, you know, a doctor at times. But sadly, that kind of throws off the bus a bit. Instead of being that strict, headstrong doctor that he is, he just becomes a coward at the necks when danger is lurking around. And that is just pathetic. I don't like it when people always portray Watson as a coward or a dumbass, because he's not always an idiot. Watson can be smart at times, and hanging out with Sherlock a lot more times, he can be a man that knows deduction from learning from Sherlock after hanging him out a couple times. And that usually means he is a smart guy. He has been following around Holmes a long time to know how he acts, how he talks, and how he deduces every problem, even though he will still get surprised along the way. Watson is not an idiot, nor is he a coward, yet this show, like this anime, freaking just portrays him as such. And it's kind of embarrassing, just seeing him portrayed that way. And that's usually for a lot of adaptations of Sherlock Holmes most of the time. Usually he's just portrayed as an idiot. He has to follow Holmes and think that he hasn't solved anything, and Watson's just there to be the sidekick because, well, someone's gotta write his story. I just want John Watson to be cool. And there's a lot of properties out there that don't portray him pretty well accurately to the books. But what are you gonna do? They just had to have some kind of comic relief or something, while Holmes had to look like the straight man. So yeah, Holmes is ridiculed by everyone. Everyone hates him. And Holmes tries to make it up by trying to meet with, well, the thief in prison and try to apologize to him, but he says he's okay. Apparently, the gentleman thief was gonna retire, actually, from being a thief after helping people for so many years. Apparently, he feels like he became a bad influence to the children because the children started stealing as well, but they stole for the wrong reasons, not understanding the message that he stole for a sense of good, while the kids are stealing just because, well, hey, the White Storm did it, so why can't we? So he feels like he became a bad influence to the younger generation, so he went off to retire and be a better man for it. Holmes tries to tell him that it's not too late to be a better father and try to be there for his daughter, so he starts to keep living and being good behavior while he's in the prison. Apparently 4 years has passed since he was in prison, and then he gets a letter from his daughter that he finds out that his daughter's getting married to a special boy that she's been seeing for almost for most of her life right now. I am very, very like nerve-wrackingly talking right now, like I'm having a gun pointed to my head. So the father escapes from prison and does all the things I said previous about Sherlock Holmes' deduction prowess. But the whole thing about how he planned this immediately without knowing that his daughter was going to get married, and how he planned this all in one day is a mystery. But apparently the thief was trying to go and help an evil criminal that has been forcing him to go and help him escape prison this whole time because he worked at the kitchen. And so he's been trying to go and deteriorate the crowbars with salt in his own saliva in order to escape the solitary confinement cage. And apparently he's been using all those like little cloth ice staircases because from the start of day one to help it freeze up in the cold dead winter snow. But we all know that failed, so he had to use his own piss to warm up a cloth and then have it stick to the cold surface of the wall to be frozen so he can climb up the wall. So the bad guy in this movie knows that the thief is going to see his daughter, and after feeling betrayed and using his own escape method to get out of the prison, he's kind of pissed off and sees the letter that his daughter is getting married and uses that to his advantage to escape and kidnap his daughter. So he threatens a doctor in the prison to be treated at a hospital nearby and escapes because, well, John Watson and this Fox detective's incompetence kind of let him escape without realizing they helped him escape because they feared him and wanted him off the carriage. So, why is John Watson such a coward in this freaking movie? It annoys me. Since Holmes knew about the daughter's wedding and knew that the thief was going to go to the wedding in person so he sees his daughter at least one last time before he goes, Sherlock Holmes lies to the detectives that are after the thief just so he and Watson doesn't embarrass him in the wedding like he did last time on Katie's birthday. But sadly, well, the bad guy kidnaps the daughter, and of course you already know, Sherlock Holmes could not get past the two trains. It's come to my attention, like, it's so messed up that this little girl has been through a lot of bad times. Like, her mother dies from giving birth to her, and the grandfather refuses to take care of her because they don't know who the father is, which is really pretty fucked up when you think about it. I mean, all the detectives say that he's a cruel father for leaving her daughter because, well, he went and squandered up his family fortune and went to become a gentleman thief just to support her and the orphanage. and they say that he's a cruel monster of a father, while a grandfather fucking refuses to take care of his own granddaughter because they don't know who the damn father is. Like, what the hell is up with that? That is just the stupidest excuse ever. Why would you say that, hey, I'm not going to take care of this kid because I don't know who the dad is? You know that your daughter gave birth to this girl, so why not take care of her? That is just the stupidest thing ever to say, to not take care of her and just make her an orphan to a dying orphanage. At this point, the father is just doing his best to be a gentleman thief to support an orphanage and his daughter and also the slums of London. A very true gentleman thief indeed. So the gentleman thief turns himself into the bad guy, saying he hid all the treasures and lied that he was never generous in the first place, just so he can free his daughter. It works because, well, let's face it, the bad guy is not the sharpest apple in the bunch, and kidnaps the gentleman thief. With the help of Katie, the gentleman thief's daughter, if I haven't mentioned, Holmes asks her if she remembers anything where she was being held up when she was kidnapped, and she goes by all the clues, scents, and sounds of what happened when she was captured, helping Holmes try to deduce what happened and where they can find the father and the bad guy. Luckily, Holmes was able to piece things together from what Katie has told him, and then they found out where the villain and the gentleman thief are staying at. They capture the bad guy, the gentleman thief gets shot by the bad guy gets hit by a freaking cane by cowardly lion John Watson, and the daughter gets to see her father again before she goes off to her honeymoon with her husband on the Titanic. Seriously, that ship looks like the Titanic. I feel like the daughter is gonna fucking die by the end of this movie once they find out that thing sank on an iceberg. Like, for real, it looks like the Titanic. So, what did I thought about this movie? Well, I do love the animation. The animation is beautiful to look at. I do love those 3D animated films that make everything look like a 2D animated film. So that honestly puts a smile on my face that at least it does try an effort to look like 2D animation. I mean, I do prefer hand-drawn stuff on stuff most of the time, but honestly, I do love things don't try to look very hyper-realistic and just look like a cartoon. So technically, I honestly do enjoy the look of the film, so it was a nice little easy watch to have when having those restless nights. It is a kids movie. It is first and foremost a kids movie, and it does make sense why they have to make Watson a coward, because, you know, I don't know how a kid will react to an awesome John Watson. I mean, I know how he will react. He will say John Watson's a badass. But sadly, hey, we just have to appease to the audience, I guess. It's a nice little story about, you know, being with family and trying to be a supportive parent and not try to be a deadbeat, you know? And also, him being a gentleman thief was pretty nice too, seeing how he gives all the money and riches to the poor community and steal from all the awful rich people of the world. I'm kinda disappointed this wasn't a Sherlock Holmes versus a gentleman thief kind of movie. I mean, it did subvert my expectations to show that it's more of a story about a man who wants to be a better father. So honestly, I didn't have no problem with that plot point. But it's less mystery and more about, you know, the gentleman thief trying to support his daughter Katie and trying to be better for it. So it's less of a Sherlock Holmes story and more about this gentleman thief and his story arc. I mean, yeah, Sherlock Holmes does go through a short story arc about how everyone thinks that he's a cruel man for arresting a guy that didn't do nothing wrong to people at all, and he's just being a nice supportive father. But honestly, that kind of gets scrapped a little bit when we see a clip of Holmes just basically being goggled at by a girl who is like freaking fangirling over how much that Sherlock Holmes stole her bike.
I must borrow this!
Sherlock Holmes took my bicycle!
Like, she is just orgasming with joy that he stole her bike. So I don't know if the arc still worked, because there are still people that gush over him from time to time in the movie. So I don't know if all the hatred lasted for 4 years, or maybe everyone got over it quick, who knows. But it's not a bad movie, it's well made, and I think the animation is high praise for it, since it's made by a Hong Kong team, so I think that's pretty cool. I kinda have a complaint this movie technically sequel baited us. No, really, it sequel baited us. It was just like watching the first Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey Jr. They go in, the movie ends, he solves the case, but then finds out that the bigger enemy during the case was James Moriarty all along. I mean, I get it, that is totally a Sherlock Holmes thing to do, to connect everything to Moriarty, but it's just so weird. I mean, they don't know if they're gonna get a sequel or not. How do you know this movie's gonna do well? I mean, this movie came out in 2019, and we're just getting it now here in the States on 2021. So, who knows? Maybe this will get a sequel. Will I watch it? Probably. I mean, I would love to see Sherlock Holmes stories that actually pay tribute and take the time and love and care with the characters of the story, and not be horrendous abominations like Will Ferrell's Holmes and Watson. So I'm honestly optimistic of seeing more from this Sherlock Holmes universe. Or maybe I should take a look at those comics that this Hong Kong writer has written before. In short, I'll just give this movie a 6.7 out of 10. It's not that great, but it's very enjoyable and an easy sit to watch through. So I honestly kind of recommend it, just to see the animation alone. So anyway, I should go to bed, people. I'm very tired and exhausted, and I sound like a nervous person being pointed at gunpoint right now, and I've been fumbling all of my sentences for this entire review, but I kind of want to make it fresh on my mind before I forget everything, and take notes to actually make this review kind of better, hopefully. And try not to be very long and winded in an hour long, just a bit short. So anyway, thanks you guys for watching. If you like this, cool. I'm glad you support this channel after 101 subscribers. I will see you, Wolfpack, in the next video. Ciao, darlings.